Hello, Eric Zaldivar. Before we talk about spaghetti westerns, may you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, my name is Eric Zaldivar, and even though it's a source of great shame, I am a filmmaker.
Oh,
But unlike a lot of my peers, I'm also an enthusiast and a historian. I specialize in genre cinema mostly, particularly the subject that we will, with any luck, be discussing about today, I should say.
okay. So talk to me about your video featuring Richard Harrison, as well as what he contributed for spaghetti westerns.
Um, well, that's a series of videos that I've been making lately. Over the past year and a few months, I started making them mainly to exercise the demons of my ill-spent youth watching a lot of these movies. And the Richard Harrison one in particular, the focus of that particular video being a film called Uno dopo all'altro, one after another. That is the third one in the series. And it's probably my favorite of the four that I've done so far, mainly because of Richard's participation. What would you like to know about the video exactly?
Well, just tell us a little bit who he was and what.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Sorry. Yeah, Richard was an American who had a contract who was under contract by AIP in the early '60s. I want to say maybe by 1959 and into '62, '63. And he mostly had just supporting roles, nothing starring. And he decided to try his luck in Italy, where a lot of his peers were going to because there was work there. And he just sort of fell into Italian genre cinema, starting with the Peplums, the Sword and Sandal movies, where he played a few gladiators. And he became a fairly big star in Europe because of those films. And he got into the Westerns when they became popular, and he made over 15 of them. And he is a very interesting. He has an insane career to follow. We should be so lucky to have even a third of that career, really, nowadays. It didn't amount to terribly good movies by any means, but there's a few in there that are worth seeking out. And like I said, Richard just had this amazing career, spanning 30 years and all over the world, and never quite made it here, but in the United States, rather, in Hollywood. But he did all right for himself. He certainly did.
And he recommended Clint Eastwood to Sergio Leone. That's pretty interesting.
That is his. That he considers that his greatest achievement in his career. And I guess, considering the 105 films that he made, one can't really argue with that fact. The type of films he made, anyway.
One thing I know nothing about is the pre-Leone spaghetti westerns. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Mostly, what everybody will probably tell you are the Winnetal films. They were made by Germans, so they're not necessarily Italian westerns per se, and they're not actually. But actually, Richard's western career begins with a pre-Leone spaghetti western, Gunfight at Red Sands. The films hadn't quite found their footing yet. Leone very much began that cinematic language, although there are hints of stuff that I think Leone did pilfer from, certainly. But yeah, they're very. They try to be American in style. I'm not sure. I don't think they actually really accomplish that, thanks to the dubbing and some of the wonky screenwriting that comes with lost in translation type of way of doing things. But yeah, that's what they were. Gunfight at Red Sands being one of them. Another film called with Rod Cameron, the great matinee idol. Bullets Don't Argue is another one that's quite good. But yes, the style of the style of the Leone films wouldn't come until after Leone kind of cemented it, and even then afterwards, what people don't know or don't realize rather is Leone's style wasn't really aped by a lot of people post Leone. There's a few, like Sergio Leone being certainly one of them. La Resa de Conti or The Big Gun Down is very much a Leone clone. But a lot of spaghetti westerns are kind of stylish, don't really follow that sort of operatic posturing that the Leone movies do. And that's I think that's a great surprise to a lot of people if they dive deep enough into the genre. So it's really hard to say. It's really not right to say rather that the Leone cinematic language didn't come in till after 1964 with the release of A Fistful of Dollars. It did, but it wasn't exactly followed through for what are we talking, like 300 to 400, maybe 500 movies. A lot of them are.
You had the creamy films as well, which predate the Giallo.
Right.
And just to segue, because Fulci, who did a couple of Giallos himself, made some spaghetti westerns. The ones I know are Massacre Time and For the Apocalypse. And I was wondering what you thought about those films.
Yeah, Fulci actually directed technically 5 Italian westerns, if you want to count the 2 Jack London adaptations, White Fang and Challenge of White Fang, both starring Franco Nero. But and then as you said, there was Massacre Time, For the Apocalypse, the 2 White Fang movies, and then very late in the period, in the late 70s, was a movie called Silver Saddle with Giuliano and Gemma. Now, out of all of them, my favorite is Massacre Time. I think Massacre Time is quite good. If I had to come up with a list of top 20 of these movies, that probably would be on there.
Yeah, it's really good. But you're less fond of For the Apocalypse?
I am. For the Apocalypse, to me, it just sort of meanders here and there. It's apparently based on an American novel, which they made into probably a few films, but I've seen what I think is the original. I'm not entirely certain. Of course, it's not The Outlaw of Poker Flats. It's The Outcast of Poker Flats. I think I've read. It's a short story, and I think I've read it actually, but I don't remember. But there's a film from a Hollywood movie from 1952. It says here. Let me see.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the one I saw. And that's a good movie. For the Apocalypse is it doesn't really follow the short from what I remember, and it certainly doesn't follow the American film from 52. But there's obvious similarities. The purging of the town at the beginning by vigilantes, and the survivors being these kind of no-goods, a gambler, a hooker, and what have you, a derelict. These people are casted out of society, if you will, and they find refuge in this cabin. So that stuff is in For the Apocalypse, minus the cabin. But apparently it is based on that book. I'm not a big fan of the movie. Not terribly a big fan. It kind of meanders around, and there's a lot of we go over here, go over there type of narrative. And
okay,
it has its moments. Tomas Milian is fun as this weirdo kind of hippie character, murderous type of fella. But overall, I'm not like a huge fan of it. No, I think it gets bogged down in a lot of Fulci's proclivities in terms of like the gore and stuff like that, which I'm totally for, but just not in that movie for whatever reason. I mean, Massacre Time gets fairly bloody as well, especially for the time, '66. But Massacre Time is just. What's great about Massacre Time is that, like the Leone movies, it takes its time in getting where it's going. It's deliberately paced, and then at the end, it kind of goes all balls out and gets fairly violent. And there's a little bit of I've said this elsewhere, but there's a little bit of the Hong Kong action films of the 80s, like a John Woo movie with the balletic, gunfights and people jumping around and flying around. There's a little bit of that at the end of Massacre Time during the climax. It's very crude, but the influence seems to be there. And at the end, not to spoil too much, but when the villain is killed, some doves fly, away, and that's very much a John Woo trademark. So that the Massacre Time is interesting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So what film projects have you worked on?
Several. I have a producing credit as well as I did a second unit on Mike Malloy, who I believe you had on the show.
Yeah.
Mike Malloy's Eurocrime, the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
We also did a very small Western for very little money called The Scarlet Worm, which I believe is available on Amazon under a different title. I'm not entirely sure what that title is. But various things here and there. I wrote a draft for this upcoming Kioma movie that will be directed, or we'll see, will be directed by Enzo Castellari. I'm not entirely sure if that movie's happening now. But
tell me about the status of your Django movie.
Yeah, Django Lives. That's a long thing. I believe that project was announced back in, oh my God,
like 2010?
December 2012.
Oh, okay.
I think, yeah, it's been a while. The status, I can't really tell you. Not because I don't want to. I very much like to. But, Malloy and I, who was my writing partner on it, we got bought out by John Sayles some time ago, back in 2015. I'm keeping in touch more or less with the project, thanks to the star, Franco Nero. But, it's just kind of up in the air. Sayles rewrote it, although it's the same story pretty much. Rewrote it, was going to direct. There was some brouhaha I can't get into, but at the moment it's being the director at the helm is a German man called Christian Alvart, and the only thing I really know about Mr. Alvart is that some time ago, I believe it was 2009 or 2010, he made this $40 million studio movie, a Hollywood movie, called Case 39, with starring Renee Zellweger before she disappeared into the ether for about what seems like 7 years or so. That's the only thing I know about him. That film bombed, so he went to, I guess, movie jail for some time. Went back to Germany. Made a lot of films in Germany since. And now he's back. He's being repped by a big agency out here, CAA. So I don't know. I don't know what the future of Django is at the moment. And unfortunately, it is contingent on Franco's participation. Otherwise, you don't have a movie. And, Franco is getting up there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish you luck with it. It would be nice to see.
Would be. Yeah.
But, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm interested because you and Mike you guys live for this stuff, right?
We do, yeah. It was serendipitous, the whole thing. I met Franco through Mike. Well, technically we met him together, but I met Franco through Mike's project, Eurocrime, back in 2008. And the idea, I guess, started formulating in my brain a little bit of like a third Django. And I thought, there would be no opportunity to do so because to try to pitch anybody on that, it would be impossible. However, in 2012, when Django Unchained was announced, all of a sudden there was an opportunity. We figured we could ride the coattails of what's essentially the ripoff. Funnily enough, although we'd never be seen that way. And I just Franco was in town. I was living in Miami at the time, and he invited me to a screening of some sort. And I was working at MTV, and that afternoon I just wrote up a synopsis on what I would like to see more or less for the third Django, and I had been working on this script for a Wyatt Earp kind of sort of bio pic, but only focusing on his time in Hollywood. And I just transposed that idea into Django. And, in the film, Django is 1915, and Django is a consultant on Westerns. And, the movie just gets going from there. But, and so I told Franco, and he says, well, write a detailed synopsis of the whole thing, and I'll, a treatment, basically. And I'll give you the yay or nay on that. And I did, and then the next day I gave it to him, and thankfully he liked it. And so, we were off to the races after that, and it took a long time to get the rights and all of that. But it was a neat year or two, that Mike and I were involved. It was quite interesting, and to no, it was interesting. The process of getting the rights. It was interesting to see how Italian law works. Not well, but it was interesting to get the inside skinny on all that. It was an interesting time. It really was.
Okay.
But
well, hopefully it happens. Franco's not dead yet. When Franco dies, then it's over. But until then,
I will say, to reiterate what I said earlier. I didn't mean that Franco had to merge with the infinite for the movie to be completely over. What I meant was is that Franco, it's a rough and tumble, kind of.
No,
role.
I get it.
So
he's not 30 years old anymore.
He's not, and we obviously wrote that into the script. However, he was much more sprightly back in 2012 than he is now, and I think that he could have handled what we put him through in the script. But now, I'm not so sure. I haven't seen Franco in some time, but he's getting on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you made multiple YouTube visual essays, let's call them, about spaghetti westerns, and the one thing that you will retain, at least I certainly retained, is that you've seen a lot of them. And I was wondering, how many do you figure you've seen?
I spent a good part of my teenage years and early 20s watching them. If I'd had to take a guess to give you a number, it'd be well over 200. I couldn't give you an exact number, though. I have, from many gracious people over the years, have, on trades and things, and sometimes just outright gave them to me. I have mountains of DVD-Rs of a lot of movies.
Groovy.
And I watched all of them, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So how long does it take to make a YouTube video like that? It's 20 minutes usually? These videos, in length, they're 20 minutes?
The last two have been nearly 20 minutes.
Right.
The first two were 10-ish, no more than 12. It really depends, because editing is a bizarre beast. You never know how long something's going to take you. You may feel that you're 2 hours away from finishing something, and the next thing you know, it's 10 hours later, and you're maybe 80% done. It's really hard. If you're a perfectionist, I'm not saying I'm a perfectionist, because certainly those videos are not without faults. But I try my best, and I always want to do as good a product as I can with the amount of time that I'm given. But in the case of the last one took me a long time. It took me nearly a month, but that had almost everything to do with the fact that I had a little bit of tech problems over here. But minus the tech problems, I suppose the Richard Harrison video, which I believe is even longer than the one that just came out by about a minute or so, that one took, if I recall correctly, but then at the time I had a lot more free time than I do. That took about a week and a half, I want to say.
Okay.
And I spent probably 8 hours a day working.
God. Wow, that's intense. So, to talk about other people for a second, or I'm not sure if maybe you've done some stuff for them. What do you think about the site Spaghetti Western Database?
Very useful tool. I go on there, particularly when I'm going. I actually didn't use it this time, but I usually go on there whenever I my mind is not what it used to be. I used to be able to just tell you what year something came out, and sometimes I just, nowadays I just, it's been a while since I've been acquainted with a lot of this stuff that I ate up as a kid. I'm lucky that I watched it when my frontal lobe hadn't developed yet, so I'm still absorbing things, and I have total recall on a lot of things. But in the case of, as I'm getting, older now, I other problems and adult situations, and it's harder to remember minutia. So I will have an idea of what I think I'm going to say, and I know what I'm going to say always, but I just don't. I need to confirm, this particular factoid that I have in my head to make sure it's actually correct. So I'll go on the Spaghetti Western database and just confirm it, whether it be a year or a scene that I remember from a particular movie, if it goes this way or that, and I just want to reacquaint myself with it so I don't mess up, So yes, I will use the database certainly as a tool.
Cool.
It's very handy.
Yeah, it's a solid encyclopedia for people who want to familiarize themselves and get into spaghetti westerns. So,
of course, certainly.
We were talking about home video a little bit earlier. What are some good Blu-rays of spaghetti westerns that you want to recommend?
Well, I don't own it, so I feel a little strange about recommending them. But
okay.
I'm looking to. I've been coveting the Sartana box set by Arrow.
I have it.
Some time now. I'm waiting. You do? Yeah. Do you enjoy the movies?
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun. They're really silly. They're really, really silly, but they're a good time. Yeah. It's not like don't. It's not like Once Upon a Time in the West or The Great Silence. It's like
no, not at all.
Not at all. No.
No, they're very. I mean, for the listeners, the Sartana movies as well as the Sabata movies, similar names, but they are basically comic book movies. They even emulate that with the camera work, like the panels. There'll be a Dutch angle, or
or there'll be like gas,
like
a
silly films.
Yeah.
The later ones obviously have a lot of gadgets and things in them, so they're not like a Leone movie at all. They're very much sort of Saturday matinee, or a comic book or something. And Italians like their comic books. They still do. Comic books are huge in Italy.
They're fun movies.
Always have been.
I like it. I like this.
Yeah.
I like the Sartana box set. If you want to, if that's like The Escapist or like, one thing I thought one time is they had like gas, and I was thinking like the Adam West Batman. So I did it was like purple gas or something. I don't remember, but no, they're good. It's a great set. It's a great set. There's so much love in the set, which is it's like a great treatment and for pretty stupid movies. But yeah, worth scooping. And I know there have been like the Grand Duel just came out on Arrow, and so did Kioma, and the what else? The Arrow's been holding it down basically for spaghetti westerns, and the Great Silence came out last year, or a year last year or the year before.
Was it Arrow that put it out? I wasn't even aware that Arrow put that out.
No, it was someone else. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think
I'm ad-libbing now.
You're talking about it.
Yep.
No, what you said about Batman was actually very astute. The '60s Adam West one, because the Sartana movies, particularly the later ones, they're right at home with like an episode of The Wild Wild West or something.
That's the vibe.
That's essentially the vibe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Eric, thanks for your time. What do you have planned for the future before I let you go?
There's a lot of things in the pipeline. I got some very exciting news the other day. I don't know why I mentioned that because I can't really discuss it. But no, there's things going on. I hope to make more westerns mostly, although I got a few other things that are interesting. I don't know. I can't really discuss that particular thing. But Mike and I are actually working on quite a few things all at once. The future will tell whether or not those things will happen. And in terms of what I can tell you is I want to do a video on, it won't be the Spaghetti Western Deep Cuts, it won't be that series, but I want to do a video on every Django, movie ever, like every sequel, every fake sequel.
That's fun.
I want to try to tackle that.
That's cool.
It'll take a while.
I talked to Takashi Miike in September, and of course he made a very weird Django movie. Funny enough,
right?
I can tell you're not fond of it. Yeah,
video, of course. Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's great. I just think it's a movie that he made that I can say completely honestly. But
I was very excited when that came out in 2006. I couldn't wait. It took I think about 6 months for it to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it, I was fairly disappointed.
It's weird. It's definitely weird, and not a good weird. But anyways, thank you so much for your time, Eric.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.